And welcome back. Last month, the National Association of Realtors reported that home prices fell from a year ago, and that was the first time in 11 years that prices decreased on a year-over-year basis. That trend continued in March because they just reported today, which is April 20th, that the median home sale price in the United States fell year over year once again. However, though, that's not the full story though, because despite the fact that prices are down compared to 12 months ago, they actually increased compared to the previous month. Also, the National Association of Realtors just announced today as well that home sales actually fell compared to the previous month, but also is down greatly compared to 1 year ago. Our housing market is very unique, to say the least. So in today's video, I'm going to unpack this brand new report from the Realtors Association that was just announced today. Also, I'm going to provide my own analysis of their data as well, especially regarding home sales as well as home prices as well. And with that said, let's begin today's video because I have a lot to share. And of course, consider subscribing as well if you guys haven't done so already. I post frequent housing market updates so you guys can make a more informed decision about where you should be buying or selling a house. So according to the Realtors Association, again, just posted today, overall existing home sales edged lower in March, but on a month-to-month basis, home sales decreased in 3 of the 4 major U.S. regions, while sales remained fairly steady in the Northeast. Having said that, compared to 1 year ago, home sales are down greatly. Now, here's exactly what I mean by this. Here's a chart I pulled from the Realtors Association's website here. Here is the seasonally adjusted annualized rate for home sales. For March, it was 4,440,000. That's a decrease of 2.4% from last month, but a giant decrease of 22% compared to March of 2022, when at that time there was 5,690,000 home sales on an annualized basis. Also at 4.4 million right now, this is well below 2020 through 2022 as well. Here is a look at each of these major regions as well, because on a year-over-year basis, they saw the biggest decrease in the West, down by 30.5%, whereas the Midwest still was decreasing, but not nearly at the same rate as the West, only falling by a 17.6%. Here's also something interesting as well, because the Northeast was flat on a month-to-month basis, whereas the Midwest fell by 5.5% compared to February. The South fell by 1%, and the West fell by 3.5%. Also, take a look at this, because here's a look at home sales on an annualized basis according to the National Association of Realtors. I pulled this from their website, and they actually gave me permission to share this on the 29th of September. If you guys want access to this Excel file here, you have to pay $1,500 in order to get access to that, unless you're a member of the Realtors Association, in which I am. So anyways, look at this. For March, there was again 4.44 million home sales on a seasonally adjusted annualized basis, of course. This means home sales in the United States have now decreased in 13 out of the past 14 months. In other words, the pace of home sales in the US have been decreasing ever since February last year. The only month we saw an increase was actually in February, when the analyzed home sales was at 4.55 million. But of course, in March, they decreased by 2.4% and also were down by 22% compared to March of 2022, which, by the way, according to my analysis right here, this is the 19th consecutive month where home sales were down on a year-over-year basis. Okay, let's change gears slightly here and talk about home prices here. So according to the Realtors Association, the median sold price is $375,700. That's a decrease of 0.9% compared to 1 year ago. 1 year ago, the median sold price was just under $380,000. Now, here's where it gets really interesting here. And there's 2 main points I want to touch on regarding this table right here. So at $375,700, this is actually the highest prices we've seen going back to October last year, when the median sold price was just under $379,000. That's number one. Number two is this right here, because look at the West. The West fell by 7.5%, going from $611,000 to now $565,000. That's a decrease of 7.5% on a year-over-year basis. Whereas the South, the Midwest, and the Northeast saw gains. So without this decrease in the West, this number right here would actually be positive. Now, having said that, without the West, we would still see a very small increase though, because the Northeast only increased by 1%, the Midwest increased by 1.7%, and the South barely squeaked by with an increase of only 0.3%, going from 346,400 to 347,600. And of course, I have a lot more to share regarding home price trends as well. So take a look at this. This again is that Excel file I pulled from their website. And these are the two columns I actually pulled from their website here. So again, at 375,700, the lowest levels going back to October last year, when the median sold price was $378,800. Now here's something the Realtors Association did not mention, because the month-to-month change, this is the change from February to March this year, was actually an increase of 3.3%. So we have this very interesting market where prices are down by 0.9% compared to 12 months ago, despite the fact that prices actually increased by 3.3% compared to February. There's a few things I want to touch on regarding this, is that these numbers right here are not seasonally adjusted. Therefore, I actually want to look back at what was the average March month-to-month change going back to 2010. That's the average change from February through March every single year going back to 2010. And based on my nerdy Excel spreadsheet right here, or formula, the average was actually a gain of 4.2%, whereas this year it increased by 3.3%. So basically, in my opinion, what we're seeing right now regarding home prices is that we're seeing a seasonal uptick in our housing market. Prices tend to increase every single year, or every single year on average, as you can see by this average, a gain of 4.2%. But the gain is below the averages we've been seeing though. So we're seeing a seasonal uptick, but not the same rate we saw over the past several years. But wait, there's more, because of course, compared to 1 year ago, prices are down by 0.9%, going from 379,300 now to just under 376,000. And that's a decrease of 0.9%. So here's something you guys should be aware of, because as I mentioned, last month, they reported a decrease in home prices compared to 1 year ago. And that actually broke an 11-year record in which we saw year-over-year increases compared to 12 months ago. So this decrease of 0.9% is only the second month, which is coincidentally the second month in a row, we saw year-over-year decreases after 11 years of increases. Now, here's something you guys should be aware of as well, because from February 2022 through February 2023, that was last month's report, the Realtors Association reported a decrease of 0.2% in the median sold price in the US. And that was the first time that prices fell on a year-over-year basis in 11 years. In my personal opinion, the year-over-year decreases will likely get worse all the way until May or June this year, because prices were absolutely skyrocketing through June last year, which we'll probably not see that same rate. Therefore, this year-over-year decrease, again, down by 0.9%, is likely going to get worse through May and June this year. Also, as you guys recall, home prices reached all-time record highs back in June last year, when the median sold price was $413,800. This means that prices have decreased by 9.2% compared to June last year. So just taking a step back here, that sounds like a lot, right? Prices decreasing by 9.2% from June last year to March this year. So I actually want to look at what was the average change from June through March every year going back to 2010, because it's entirely normal to see decreases in home prices in the second half of the year. That's our seasonality of our housing market. But when looking at the change from June through March going back to 2010, that change was a decrease of 3.7%. Whereas this year we saw a decrease of 9.2%, nearly 3 times as bad as the average going back to 2010. But wait, there's more, because this 9.2% decrease is actually the biggest June through March decrease going back to 2011. Back then, the prices decreased by 12.6%. Additionally, I figure you guys are probably interested to see what is the changes in home prices compared to 2 years ago, as well as 3 years ago as well. 3 years ago was right at the onset of this pandemic here. So compared to 2 years ago, home prices have increased by 14%. Compared to 3 years ago, this is March 2020, the median sold price has increased a whopping 34%. All right, changing gears slightly here, let's talk about housing inventory, because the month supply, according to the Realtors Association, was only 2.6 months. This is down from the 3.3 months we saw back in November last year, but at 2.6 months, this is still much higher compared to 12 months ago, when the month supply was 2 months even. The National Association of Realtors also reported how fast or how slow houses are selling right now. So days in the market was 29 days this March, down from 34 days that we saw in February. So days in the market actually decreased by 5 days compared to February. However, though, this is much higher compared to 1 year ago, when days in the market was only 17 days. Now it's 29 days. Also, 65% of houses that sold in March were on the market for less than 1 month. First-time home buyers. So first-time home buyers were responsible for 28% of all home sales in March, up from 27% in February, but down from the 30% we saw in March of 2022. All cash sales. A lot of people ask about this as well. All cash sales account for about 27% of all transactions this March, down from 28% in February, and also down from 28% from last March as well. Individual investors or second home buyers, who of course make up many cash sales, purchased 17% of all houses in March, down from 18% in February, and also from the previous year as well was 18% as well. Distressed home sales, which of course is foreclosures and short sales, represented 1% of all home sales in March, nearly identical to last month and also compared to 1 year ago. And lastly, I have a few slides I want to share with you guys in today's video. If you guys are still watching, I appreciate you. So here's a look at the percent change on a year-over-year basis for home prices. Again, this March down by 0.9%, whereas last month a very, very small decrease of, 0.2%? A small decrease compared to February of 2022. Look at the differences here though. This is crazy. Down by 0.9% this month, but last year we saw gains of 14.7% compared to March of 2021. And of course, starting in June, we saw a slight decrease in year-over-year changes here, going to 12.8% at that time, and then decreasing to single digits before we hit negative territory over the past 2 months. Here's another interesting slide as well. Here's a percent change on a year-over-year basis for home sales. So again, this March down by 22%, but this is not as bad as the decreases we saw in November, December, and January, where home sales were falling by over 30%. Now, of course, having said that, this decrease of 22% that we saw this March is much worse than the 5.5% decrease we saw back in 2022. And lastly, here's one more slide I want to share with you guys, because this is the percent change in sales from a year ago by price range. The biggest decrease was actually for houses that sold in March for over $1 million, a decrease of 29.4% in the number of $1 million houses that sold compared to 1 year ago. Next was houses that sold in the range of $750,000 to $1 million, decreasing by 27.5%. In contrast, for home sales in the range of $250,000 to $500,000, that decreased by 14.2%. That's nearly half the decline of $1 million plus properties, decreasing by 29.4%. And with that said, please comment below your biggest takeaways from today's video. Also, if you guys got any value out of this video whatsoever, then please hit the like button. I greatly appreciate that. Of course, I appreciate you. Hope you guys have an awesome day. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.